Well, it started in part by doing the cottage book, and the cottage book triggered me doing some looking back at Grandpa Cowan as the one who had purchased the cottage property and therefore the one I dedicated the book to. And it occurred to me that in that process I should know a little more about him beyond what I already knew. And that led to getting on Ancestry.ca, which led me to start exploring all sorts of things that were written by Uncle Stuart and some of the others that had gathered together family histories and done all that good work that they had done over the years. So all these things started to come together, and before I knew it, I was intrigued and excited by it and totally distracted by it as well. So it became the hobby I did at 11 o'clock at night when everything else was covered and all the emails were done and everything else was put to bed. Started to do that as a little hobby, and before long you found yourself typing and searching and clicking through all sorts of sites and finding things. And as with all good addictions, you need the positive reinforcements from time to time to keep you going. And with this, there was just so many times that something would pop up, either as an old record or an old document or something else that was unexpected. So that before long you looked at the clock and you said, where did those hours go? And suddenly the night was no longer young. But that was a lot of fun. One of the patterns is that they're all very much individuals, which sounds like a contradiction, but that seems to be much more defined for them as I compare it to other families I've known or other families I've experienced in my lifetime. The individuality, I think, goes back perhaps to both the Scottish roots of self-reliance and all those things, as well as the dour Scots Presbyterian tradition of being independent and being self-sufficient and working hard and achieving as part of your identity and as part of your stewardship in life, all the things that were part of that tradition. So each one of them had very diverse areas of interest. There are some threads that are there in terms of writing, so quite a number of them had either an interest or ability to write. Some of them were very gifted in the arts, so you see some of that thread going through there, which is not unique to our family, but you certainly see that pattern finding itself in a number of different places. And then another piece of it was business, so that there seemed to be an entrepreneurial streak in the group as well as teaching. That was another piece. A number of them that were writers. Great Grandpa Cowan, in my case, subby Reverend Hugh Cowan, son of John and Mary, who was born in 1867, was somebody after he was educated at Manitoba College, which is now part of the University of Manitoba, taking courses in human science and moral reasoning, which is an interesting major to have had. You could see some flares in terms of writing very early on with him in some of his activities and interests. He was the one that became a Presbyterian minister, so he learned a lot and spent a lot of time reading about things like theology in his degree programs. But he was somebody that had a keen interest in history. And so as part of the history process, he was somebody that enjoyed exploring history and understanding history, and then started writing about history. He ended up compiling Mare Douce, which was a summary of the world around here in Owen Sound and in the surrounding areas of Georgian Bay. Mare Douce meaning sweet sea was the translation for that. And then he also ended up writing a history of the Detroit River District down in Windsor in Essex County, which just has been republished by a company in the States as part of the War of 1812 200-year celebration. So it's still considered one of the best works on the history of the area down there. He then did one on Kent County, which is a little further north near Chatham and that part of southwestern Ontario. Did also a book of the history of Sault Ste. Marie as part of their celebration and one of their events. And then also did a book and adventure tale of life up in the La Cloche district of Ontario, up north of that. So he had an interest both in storytelling and in also understanding the stories of people that were part of his world. So he was somebody that wrote extensively in that. Of course, Uncle Stuart was a writer in his career working with the Globe and Mail. James A. Cowan was an early editor at the Star and Star Weekly, writing a number of articles in his time at the Star, and then moving on to writing feature articles for Maclean's magazine back when they were big broadsheets in the 20s. So in his 20s, he was writing articles that were being published nationally there. He also did an article for Esquire magazine in the 30s, the same issue where they...
Who would we talk about?
James A. So he had an article there in the same issue that introduced Pinocchio and some of the other characters. So it's actually a very collectible edition of Esquire. And then he also continued writing for Maclean's on and off over the course of up until the 40s. He then went on to doing a number of different kinds of publications with his industrial work with Inco and some of the others. So writing always was part of his interest area. And that was something, as you can see, threaded through a number of the people